Welcome in, everybody. It's your boy, GS Luke, here with our DFS live stream from Monday Night Football, going to break down everything you need to know about this matchup between the Cowboys and the Giants. And we've got ourselves a little bit of a monsoon going outside right now, so hopefully you can't hear it too loud. But if you didn't hear on the news, there is a hurricane about to hit Florida. So I'm on the east side of the state, so I don't have to worry about it nearly as much. But it is, really bad out there in terms of the weather. A lot of rain coming down. So if the stream out of nowhere just goes black, you know what happened. That means I ran out of power and whatnot. But hey, we're gonna stay live on here as much as humanly possible and bring you guys the goods. So without further ado, let's go ahead and hop in. I can see Wilson Dog is down there in chat already. What is going on, man? Hopefully you're having a solid start to your Wednesday. But as we always do with these Thursday night streams, or I should say Monday night here. We do it for Thursday nights as well, right? Start with the injury report. So let's take a look at it first for the Cowboys, more notable than what we have for the Giants. You have Dalton Schultz, who was marked as likely out early this morning. Now, we haven't gotten the official word that he's inactive yet. Probably going to come out any second now, but more than likely going to be on the sideline. And also Michael Gallup. Now, we got that word early this morning. It wasn't that he was likely out. It was that he was going to be inactive. So when they come out with that official list, expect to see Michael Gallup 100% rolled out. And barring a miracle for Dalton Schultz, he's also likely going to be on the sidelines. From the New York Giants perspective, there's actually not as many injuries to speak of. A lot of defenders that are injured, a few linemen like Leonard Williams, one of their best players on the defensive side, is going to be out. A few starting defensive backs like Justin Lane, also Aaron Robinson, are going to be out. And as a result, right, you have a hurt Dallas team, Dak Prescott out. We know about that. A few pass catchers down. Gallup and Schultz are their number 2 and number 3 wide receiver, right? CeeDee Lamb's by far their best target, but their number 2 and number 3 guys, that's including a tight end, right, who's one of their best wide receivers, aren't going to be out there. And you can see the Vegas line likes the Giants here. They have them as a 1-point favorite, just a 38.5 point total. They're projecting this to be a slog of a game, low scoring, and frankly, for it to be relatively competitive. And while I agree with that, there are more than enough opportunities or more than enough avenues for success for a team like the Cowboys to win this by 21 points, or on the flip side, what I think is a little bit more likely for the Giants to go out there and absolutely smash tonight. And what I'm going to do, and I might be a madman for doing this, right, is I'm going to force in a bunch of 5-1s in heavily stacked 4-2 lineups into my lineups. I'm going to build 150. 75 are going to be a heavy stack for the Cowboys, and 75 are going to be a heavy stack for the Giants. Because frankly, this competitive game script, while I think that it is the most likely outcome, it's going to be owned in at least like half your lineups. So you're going to see a ton of 3-3s, a bunch of 4-2s, people that want to jam in defenses, kickers, a bunch of running backs from both teams. And that build, while from a median projection standpoint for cash, I would say by all means, go ahead and do so, right? We're going to talk about cash when we get to the lineup construction standpoint. If you're going out there and trying to win a GPP, don't act like you're going to be unique. If you're going to have to go out there and try and find leverage, you're going to have to take guys that are like $200, shots on a few backup tight ends that are, we'll talk about a couple of them like Hudson, who's $1,800. You can take shots, but you're going to have to be a lot more unique rather than maybe just taking more of a strong stance, right? Assuming a little bit more of an outlier game script happens, right? And like I said, it's not like I'm choosing one team or the other. I'm going to split it directly down the middle. I'm going to play 75 lineups with one game script and 75 with the other. Early in the year, it's kind of hard to make those kind of assumptions, but anytime we get these super close spreads, that's how I play the slate, because a majority of people, they're going to look at that spread and say, oh, wow, this is going to be such a close game. And time in and time out, guys, I mean, you see just the volatility of an NFL season coming out there, the underdog sometimes going out and upsetting a team, or of course, maybe it's just the Giants going out there and absolutely handing it to the Cowboys, right? Both things are more than viable to happen. In terms of weather, we also like to look at that from time to time. It's not going to have a ton of an impact. I mean, just 7 to 10 miles an hour wind. Going here to 9 p.m., you can see it's still 6 to 8. It's going to be a little bit chilly. You can see it's feeling like it's closer to the 50s, even though it's in the 60s. But just beautiful weather for football, right? That's like what we like to see down there in the fall, right? We like a little bit of a fall weather with our football players. Let's go ahead and hop into the player poll. So let me go ahead and share that screen. And get this thing rolling. So we talked about the game script. We talked about how I think everyone's going to play this to be a really close game. Let's actually talk through the players and how I'm going to be implementing them now. So rather than just going player by player, I'm going to take this team by team. So the best way to break this down, let's go ahead and we don't have to sort it by it. We'll talk through it from a top level perspective. Is when I'm stacking each squad, I'm probably going to do it differently, right? So let's talk through how I'm doing so. So with the Giants are a rush heavy team. When they're going to go out there and hand it to an opponent, Saquon Barkley is going to probably be the reason why. He's seeing probably 20 to 30 carries. And if we're assuming a pure onslaught here, right? So not, them winning by 7 to 10 points. We're assuming that they're going to beat up on the Cowboys there. He's going to probably win by 17 to 24 points. And in that sort of game script, Saquon Barkley's, I want to say like guaranteed to be the optimal captain over there, but like, I don't know, 60, 70% of the outcomes where the Giants are killing the other team, he's going to be your optimal captain. Either him or Daniel Jones, right? Daniel Jones is like another 25 of that 30%, another like 30 of that 35% that's left over, whatever the case may be. Daniel Jones and Saquon Barkley are all of the top end upside. So I'm going to be taking a bunch of Saquon in those sort of lineups. I'm not against playing Daniel Jones and Saquon in the same lineups, but if I'm going with a Saquon, I slightly prefer getting to guys like a Sterling Shepard, guys that are a little bit more possession-based, like a Richie James Jr. They're at $5,400, just because if Saquon's going to be our captain, we're assuming that he's sucking up some of that touchdown equity, and at just a 38.5-point total game, there might only be maybe 2.5 touchdowns at the very most projecting for either side from a touchdown perspective. There's just not a ton to go around. So for me, I'm going to try and stick to taking a lot of the players that are more possession-based at wide receiver, guys that are just getting a lot of touches. So even players like a Tony Pollard, when we talk about the Dallas stack over here, if we're assuming that they're playing from ahead, he still has utility, even though he is the backup running back at $8,200, right? He's going to see right around like a 35 to 45% load when it comes to his snap share. If he's running well, now that's one thing, we'll get to the Cowboys later. I don't want to get too ahead of myself. When guys like him run well, they tend to get a little bit more run, right? So those guys that are getting a lot of the touches, if they're efficient with all of the touches or all of the snaps that they're getting, they're going to get fed even more touches, right? So it's a snowball effect. So those sort of players are the players that I'm going to try and get to, because Sterling Shepard, if he gets in a roll with Daniel Jones, could be getting a lot of targets there in third down. We know that that's definitely a possibility. And without Dalton Schultz and without Michael Gallup in the lineup, you have just an infinite amount of possibilities over here for the Cowboys. I mean, Noah Brown, undoubtedly going to be a solid value pick. We're going to talk about him over there. You have guys like a CeeDee Lamb. We know is just going to get a ton of usage, but he's relatively expensive. They're at $10,200. The real question mark is what value pick for Dallas are you going to take, right? You're going to take Simi Fehoko. They're at $2,400. You're going to go down to Jake Ferguson, the tight end, at $200 that has actually seen a few targets over the first few weeks. It's definitely a lot more predictable on the Giants side, which if I had to just choose one of the two onslaughts, let's say that you're playing 20 lineups, right? You're not playing 150. You're not able to allocate really 10 and 10. It's not as feasible as going with like a 75-75 split as what kind of like what I'm doing there. I'd prefer the Giants side, right? Because they're a little bit more predictable. We know that Saquon is going to dictate a lot of that usage, whereas on the Cowboys here in a second when we get into them, it could be any of those players that we just mentioned. On the Dallas side, I don't think it's nearly as rush heavy, especially because you have two running backs in the mix. While they will rush a lot more than the Giants per capita, it's not going to be nearly as concentrated, right? The Giants might give 2-3 snaps to their backup running back there just to spell Saquon when he absolutely needs a breather, right? They're not going to take him out any more than they have to. They're going to give Tony Pollard a bunch of snaps here just because they like giving him snaps, right? They think that he's efficient, if not a better running back than Ezekiel Elliott. I've been ringing that drum for at least a few years now. So if you're going to get to this Dallas side, I don't hate taking both running backs in the same lineup. You could take Elliott, you could take Tony Pollard together. Cooper Rush brings a bunch of rushing upside to the table as well, pun intended there with the last name. But at $9,600 in a 38.5-point total game, it's not so much about who you're playing here, right? Anyone's viable. If they score a touchdown, they get you like 20 yards and 2 catches. Literally anyone is viable because a ceiling performance is going to be 15 to 18 points. It is 10 times more about who you're correlating your lineups with for this showdown slate than the actual players that you're taking. So, if we're taking Cooper Rush, we're assuming that he's getting to his ceiling. We don't have to stack it like we would a main slate where we're taking 2 wide receivers with him, right? It could just be a one-off where we take Cooper Rush, maybe one auxiliary player, right? And that might be, let's say, a cheap Noah Brown because he gives you a little bit of flexibility, or even more so, maybe go the whole way down to Jake Ferguson. You're going down there and just hoping that he scores a touchdown, that sort of thing. Those are the sort of things you want to consider. Whereas on the other side with the New York Giants, right, I'm trying to stack to get correlation with, the defense, right? The Giants defense, and then taking somebody like a Saquon Barkley. Those sort of decisions, the roles that you're putting into your optimizer are what you should be spending your time on. Because frankly, of the guys up top, I mean, from Noah Brown up, obviously, except for Michael Gallup, who's hurt here, I'm playing like everyone up top. Don't really have anybody excluded from my player pool. I think that they're all playable. They all have their roles in the offense and are appropriately priced and appropriately owned at that too. I think that even 60% on Saquon Barkley, sure, you could fade that just for pure game theory purposes, but he's going to get all the touches. He's going to get all the usage. He's the only one who projects even close to a fantasy relevant game out of anybody here. I mean, even CeeDee Lamb is projecting for just 13, 14 points at this point, which is well below what you're looking for at that sort of price tag. You have to prioritize the guys that you need to get to and find a way to correlate your lineups. So that's where I'm going here in terms of being unique. So this is something with Showdown that, people will agree with me here. There's gonna be a lot of people out there like, oh, okay, that makes sense. A lot of people out there, they're gonna be like, what the hell is this guy talking about? I can just tell you from playing Showdown for at least 3.5 years at this point, I've had a lot of success doing so. In Showdown, being unique is great. You'd ideally, out of your portfolio of 150 lineups, like at least half of them to be unique if you can go out there and so. But you still have to enter lineups that are going to be duplicated if they perfectly fit your script, right? So just to give you an example here, I want to go over here to Draftkings. I think is a better way to talk through this. Let me go ahead and share my screen. We're going to get back to the player pool in a second here too. But in a large field GPP, just because you're probably going to duplicate yourself with 5 to 10 other people, some people would be out there so I just can't enter that lineup, right? It's using all my salary. It's relatively chalky. Those sort of builds, at least to this point of the year, have won every single slate. All the GPPs that I've won in have literally been chopped to this point, right? So if you're playing for, let's say, a 10% outcome every single week with every lineup that you're entering, so you're trying to get unique with all of your 150 lineups, which a lot of people out there are trying to do, and a lot of people are preaching to do that for every single build, you're literally paying the rake every single week. Unless you hit that one big tournament once every single year, that you go out there and pay for all your entries, most players can't sustain that sort of bankroll. So for somebody like me that's trying to find a happy medium, I'm going to enter lineups that are purposely built to be unique, right? So if they hit, they're going to probably be a one-off, which would be great, right? But they're going to be a subset of my player pool. I'm going to enter a good portion of at least, I'd say half my lineups for a Showdown slate out of my 150 that I'm pretty sure are going to be duplicated because I actually project in my optimizer projected dupes. It's literally something that I project based on total ownership. And it's not hard to do, by the way. If you have the total ownership for a lineup, it's like a one-off calculation. I multiply it by a number and it gives me the expected amount of dupes. It's not that hard to figure out, right? So you can figure these things out beforehand. I'm not afraid to enter a lineup that's going to be duplicated, let's say 5 to 10 times. Usually I set a limit at right around 15. So if it's going to be duplicated more than 15 times in the contest that I'm entering, I probably won't enter it. But if it's going to be in the single digits, a lot of times I'm okay with that. So just a lot of people out there will preach otherwise. We'll say that duplicating is the devil. It's the biggest sin that you commit, biggest cardinal sin in the entire game of playing Showdown. And that is true to a certain extent if you're playing the simulation game, right? Playing a million different outcomes, so on and so forth. You're assuming that you have a bankroll that is, let's say, 100 to 1,000 times what you're actually playing on that slate. The reality is most of you out there aren't in that situation, right? And a lot of people that are giving that advice are assuming that you're playing like a robot, assuming that you're playing like one of these professionals. And sure, I play like that. I play a really small portion of my bankroll, right? I play with a lot less risk because of that. But I know that a majority of you guys out there watching this content don't. And that's something that I've actually had to change with my content process, is to try and make it more user-friendly, more for the average user out there, rather than a DFS pro like me that thinks a little bit differently, right? We're able to eat losses a little bit more than you guys out there, right? Whereas you want to have a sustainable bankroll from slate to slate, right? Correct me if I'm wrong out there, by the way. If you want to just take that full, hit or loss sort of thing, like sure, you can be okay with that in the short term, but if you're playing that for every slate for the end of your career out here, it's gonna get real ugly real quick unless you hit a bunch of those big GPPs. That's all I'm gonna say about it. As a lot of people out there have that philosophy, and that's just that's not personally something that I agree with. Let's go ahead and catch up on the chat. I meant to do that a while ago. I got really into my little spiel there. Let's take a seat back, catch up on it, see what's going on. So we got Wilson Dog down there. What's going on, man? Hopefully you're doing well. Chad says, you're in Titusville. What's going on? You should get 10 inches of rain. Yeah, it's going to be crazy. I mean, they're going to have winds the whole way out to Mississippi where they're playing the golf tournament this week. It's actually going to have an impact on play. So, I mean, I'm going to be, 60, 70 miles, I guess, off of the epicenter there. I mean, if they're getting winds 300, 400 miles away, we're going to get quite a little storm here too. So it's going to be interesting, but we're prepared for it down here. That's for sure. C-Pup says, thoughts on Richie James? I like him. We're going to get back to the player poll here in a second. I definitely like that sort of idea. Chad says, all of your lineups are all over the place. Yeah, it's a close game. It's kind of got to be like that though. I recommend, again, we're going to talk about this actually as soon as we get through the chat here. Don't go for the 3-3, right? Try to go after one of those outlier sort of game scripts, because everyone's going to try and play it down the middle. Everyone's going to punt it, go, I don't know what's going to happen here, right? Let's just take equal parts of both teams and try and attack it. That's probably the worst thing you could do. That's my at least take on it. That's for sure. Chad says, you're like Russell Gage last week with 8 catches and a touchdown. I actually had Russell Gage. I had him there, so I was pretty happy that he got there for us. I had Mac Hollins who went off. He scored like 36 points. I had Ramondre Stevenson. I had Dameon Pierce. I had Devontae Parker was one of my main core value picks that I gave out to the people on the Patreon. I had literally all of those random dudes in DFS this week that scored like 30, 25 fantasy points at like 3 or 4K price tag. And then I played Justin Jefferson. I paired him up with guys like a Kirk Cousins stack, a Patty Mahomes stack. I got all the duds right? All the guys that I was going down there and dumpster diving for. And then all my studs just flat out bummed out. So it is what it is. So yeah, your lineups are all over the place. My if I could have just taken my value picks across the board, maybe left like $4 or $5 grand on the table, I would have been golden. Louis says, is Tolbert worth 1 or 2 looks? Yeah, we'll talk about it. I think I'll double check on that. But yeah, he's probably worth a few looks. What's his price tag here anyways? I don't know if he's active. That's the issue. So he's probably not active, dude. So honestly, that's why I don't even have my projections. I wanted to check to see if he's active. Unless we get word that he's active, Louis, probably not. I mean, that's the end of the matter there. He hasn't been active to this point. A lot of people thought that he was going to be a huge part of this offense. So we'll have to see about that. So he says, I agree on the strategy 100%. Yeah, he said, is Tolbert even going to be active? I don't know. He hasn't been to this point. People thought going into the year that he was going to be like their number 3 wide receiver. And they've had injuries to this point. They've had no reason to not play Tolbert, and he's been inactive. So I wouldn't expect that to change, right? Just because there's a few injuries this week. That's been the case for the entire season to this point, and he hasn't played. So yeah, Louis, unless we get a report on that, it might happen. We might get an injury report again any second now. We're going to get an inactives list. I'm not going to have access to it again. I'm on stream, right? So if any of you out there on Twitter get that report, feel free to go ahead and inform us down here. It's more than likely going to be a stay away spot. Brent says, is Richie James or Sterling Shepard? So they're, you're getting higher ownership on a Sterling Shepard. So let me just look here to give you an idea. So I have the other tab up. I can bring up my actual projections. So let's see. Sterling Shepard getting a decent amount of ownership for sure. A lot higher owned than a Richie James. So if you're looking to get leverage from a game theory perspective, it has to be Richie James Jr. But from the projection perspective, you're looking at somebody with a higher median projection in Sterling Shepard. But from the ceiling perspective, it's almost identical, right? Like the ceiling for Richie James Jr. is like 20, 25 fantasy points. The ceiling for Sterling Shepard is also like 20 to 25 fantasy points. I'd have to say Richie James Jr. If you're playing in cash, you have the salary. By all means, go out there and play Sterling Shepard. But if you're building in a GPP sort of perspective, and that extra salary you can utilize elsewhere, then definitely Richie James Jr. And he's lower owned, and he has that same sort of ceiling. So for sure, Richie Jones. Tolbert active. See, that's the thing, right? That's the X factor. He hasn't been active to this point. Now he is, and he's how expensive was he? Is he like 1,500, right? Okay. So if he's going to be active for the first time this year and he's $1,500, then yes, 100% he's worth a few looks because at this point they have CD Lamb at wide receiver. They have Noah Brown as their number 2 wide receiver. And technically, I mean, after Fehoko, right, he would be number 4. But with all the reports that we've seen, Tolbert's supposed to be a pretty damn good wide receiver. That's why people were pretty hyped to take him in their best ball drafts. I wouldn't be surprised if he's the number 3 now. Right, like he jumps completely over this Fehoko dude who's seen a few snaps over the first few weeks. $1,500, yeah, sign me up. I was not expecting him to be active. That's definitely a surprise, but that's a good sort of surprise because a lot of people out there that are getting their projections aren't going to have Tolbert in them. They're not even going to know he's going to be active, and yeah, I think he might be worth a few looks there. So yeah, definitely great on letting me know that there. That's good to know. Nick says, is there anybody named Guido that you can play? God, I wish. Congrats on your hit there, Nick, by the way, on the Guido outright. But yeah, damn, if there was, you'd have to lock him here because anyone named Guido is just a confirmed stud. But let's talk through this. So the sort of build that you want to avoid. The whole reason I bought up DraftKings here after I got sidetracked was to show you the type of build that you don't want to enter. So the sort of build that you don't want to enter is where you're taking like a 3-3. Where you're going like, oh, I'll take Zeke. I'm going to take the kicker from the Cowboys too. And one of the wide receivers, let's take Noah Brown, right? Let's just take 3 pieces from there that are going to be relatively chalky. On the flip side, excuse me, guys. Hopefully that wasn't too loud. Let's take some more pieces of chalk, right? So let's go out there and take, where's Sterling Shepard? There's Sterling Shepard, going to be mega chalky. Of course, Saquon Barkley for the Giants. He's going to be the biggest piece of mega chalk on the entire slate. And to wrap it up here, Richie James Jr. Or you could go up here and take, let's say, Kenny Galladay at $6,200. That sort of lineup where you're taking a 3-3 is going to have no chance of being unique. I mean, even if we go down here and take Richie James Jr., leave $1,600 on the table, I can almost guarantee you that this lineup is duplicated at least 10 times. I mean, probably closer to like 25 to 30 times in the large field GPP, and that's still leaving $1,600 on the table. By simply, and I shouldn't have taken the whole lineup out of there, right? But by simply going to a 4-2, or more importantly, what I'm going to be doing here, a 5-1 sort of stack in either direction, you're going to instantly get a lot of leverage to the field, and you can still take a lot of the top plays on the slate. So just to give you an idea, right? Let's give you an idea, still starting with Zeke. Let's still take a few pieces of chalk there that we were going to take before, right? So let's go ahead and take Noah Brown. Let's go ahead and take $1,500, right? Where is he at? Why is that? There he's Tolbert. He's only grand. Oh, I was at the captain position that he was that expensive. Okay, it makes more sense now. He's only grand, even cheaper. Even better for our purposes there. And let's put Cooper Rush in there, right? Because we took a couple wide receivers. You want to get that correlation. If they're going to go off, more than likely Cooper Rush is going to put up a decent score. He also has that rushing upside. So that's 4 players from the same team. I'm also going to take the kicker. I'm going to assume that maybe they're not the most efficient in the red zone because of the total. Still maybe just like a 45-point total game. Still going to score a few touchdowns, but going to have a few drives that end up sputtering out. And that leaves us at $15K, right? We have pretty much all the salary we want. Why not take Barkley here? Even more better, even more appetizing. Why don't we take Barkley at captain, right? And then go in here and add Ezekiel Elliott, right? And we have, what, $2,300 left on the table? This sort of lineup is almost certainly going to be unique. And Barkley, even in a losing game script, could still very well be an optimal captain. Now, we don't have to be this, let's say, adventurous about our lineup, right? It can maybe be a little bit more, I'd say like median projection, a little bit more like cash based about it. Let's go ahead and put Zeke back at the captain slot. Where is Zeke at? There he is. Let's put Barkley back at flex. And we don't have to be as cheap here. Let's go ahead and spend up rather than taking a kicker, right? Let's go ahead and put Pollard in there. In this sort of lineup where we're taking both running backs from the same team, which I mentioned, I think is perfectly viable, especially if you're going with a 5-1 sort of stack. This sort of build is going to be 10 times more likely to be unique than going with the 3-3. And it'll change from slate to slate. It's not like all 5-1s for any showdown game are going to be more unique than others. But if you're dealing with like a 10, 15-point spread, right, then the 5-1 for the advantageous team is, might be the most popular game script. But when you have a 1-point spread like what we have between these two teams, it becomes a little bit of a different game of calculus there. So that's what I'll say about the builds. We're going to hop back into the player poll, talk through some of this mid-tier range. Let's see what we've got in terms of questions down there. We have no questions. That's good with me. By the way, guys, if you have any player poll questions, feel free to go ahead and let me know. But after we get through the player poll, we will be hopping over to prize picks and going through some of my top props. So we talked about Richie James Jr. He's had plenty of usage over the first few weeks, which you have to love to see. But in terms of pure value picks, less than 5K is what I'd qualify as a value pick on Showdown. I think both defenses are well within play. Cowboys defense, anytime you're playing Daniel Jones, you have to look at the defense. I mean, the guy just makes some boneheaded moves from time to time. A lot of them end up in defensive touchdowns. You've seen safeties from Daniel Jones in the past. And though he's more of a veteran at this point, right? He's gotten a little bit of experience under his belt. He's not making nearly as many of those stupid mistakes. Once you've been a jabroni, once you've gone out there and acted like a complete fool, you're liable to go out there and do so again. So that's what I have to say about him. Love the Cowboys defense. Also, have to like the Giants defense. They're a little bit less expensive than the Cowboys. And you're going against Cooper Rush, who is equally a jabroni to somebody like a Daniel Jones, right? So it's at $3,800, I think that he's more than viable. The kickers, especially Graham Gano and the Giants, I think is worth a few looks. They haven't been that efficient in the red zone historically, particularly in the Daniel Jones era. So Graham Gano, anytime they've gone to the other side, of the 50 in field goal range, he's gotten a lot of looks. In terms of pure values at the skill positions, you have Simi Fehoko, who's a little bit less of a play now. I'd much rather get to Tolbert. You have Jake Ferguson at $200, who's a little bit less of a value now that we have Tolbert in the mix, but still, he's $200, right? He opens up a lot of flexibility up top. For the Giants, Slayton hasn't gone like any snaps, but you have Kadarius Toney out tonight, so maybe Slayton gets a few snaps, but more likely not. He's getting up there in age. Tanner Hudson's a pure flyer. He's had a few catches to this point. In fact, he's actually gotten more targets than Bellinger to this point, but Hudson's seen as more of the blocking tight end in the Giants, whereas somebody like a Bellinger is more known as a pass catcher. So I wouldn't really count on that going forward, but he's also less than half as expensive as Daniel Bellinger now. So you obviously have to pay for that sort of upside. And to this point, Hudson's gone more of the usage. So they can tell us that he's a blocking tight end all they want, but clearly Daniel Jones is still throwing to him. And that's probably about it for the player pool. I mean, down low, the Dallas side, because of the injuries, makes a lot of sense. I mean, Tolbert at $1,000, who's not on here, again, is a great play now that he's active. But a lot of it's the defenses. A lot of it's the kickers for me. Guys that are just in a low total game. We know we're going to get touches. We know the defenses, if they can get some sort of splash play on defense, could go out there and get into the optimal lineup. And I don't even think, I wouldn't play him at captain. I don't know if I'd be that adventurous when it comes to some of those kickers or defenses, but I do think that it's more viable for this slate than it would be for other slates. Let's go ahead and hop over to prize picks now, see what's going on. Let's go. There we go. Share our screen, and I'll talk through this. So I haven't done a bunch of slips for this slate specifically. Most of them I've done. There's just one 5-leg flex I did pretty much for this slate. So we'll talk through the 5 props that I have for that. But a lot of them are just these interception props. I took the over on both quarterbacks for interceptions. This is a prop that has paid me off just a ton of money to this point. Every time I run my projections, right? I run them in terms of simulation. So I go out there, I simulate exact passing yardages for all the quarterbacks, over 100 simulations. I do it for interceptions, touchdowns, so on and so forth, right? So when I'm looking at my projection sheet, I'm getting exact, to a decimal point projections for what players are doing. And when I run them, at least half of the league, and usually out of the 32 quarterbacks that are playing week to week, at least 24 of them, so usually a vast majority of the quarterbacks in the NFL are projecting for over 0.8 interceptions. And the last time we looked at it, we actually did this here on stream. There were at least 5 of them for the interception prop category that were projecting for close to 0.9 to 1 interceptions per game, which, for a 0.5 sort of prop is ridiculous. The last time I checked on both of these quarterbacks, they're above 0.8. And they're not even throwing that much. That's the thing, right? A lot of times with the simulations, it comes down to actual attempts. The more attempts a quarterback has, it's obviously correlated to more interceptions. This game, you're not accounting for that many attempts. they're just so wildly inefficient, and they're against a pretty decent defense on either side when it comes to getting interceptions, that they're projecting off the board for it. So I take the over on both. Like, it's just, I took the over on both. It's something that's paid me a lot of money to this point. Now, when I'm running the interception props, I'm not always running them together. Now, because it's a 5-leg flex, I'm a little bit less worried about it. But if I was running like a 2-leg power or a 3-leg power, that sort of thing, I probably would only want one, maybe two of these interception props in it at the same time. But I love mixing them in. Just from a percentage standpoint, I've been hitting on them at about a 75% rate, which there's still volatility in there, right? There's still the 25% that have been killing me from time to time, but just it's been printing money more often rather than not. Heading over to the rushing yards, I had the over on Saquon Barkley. Again, I really think they're going to win this game tonight. I mean, Cooper Rush, he's been okay to this point, but the Giants really have been a little bit impressive. So I think if there's going to be a dominant side here, it is going to be the Giants. So I took the over on Saquon Barkley. I also took the over on Daniel Jones fantasy scores. Where's the good old fantasy score department at? There it is. Daniel Jones 15 fantasy score. I took the over on too. I'm expecting him to get at least a touchdown, probably put up at least 30, maybe 40 yards rushing. What's his rushing yard prop even at? It's 20 yards. So yeah, I'd probably take the over on that too, honestly. That's not too bad of a prop. I projected him close to 30. I remember that off the top of my head in terms of our last simulation there. But I'm taking the over on Saquon and Daniel Jones. And on the flip side, I'm taking the over on CD Lamb receiving yards. So thought process there is right. We're taking a little bit of a Giants. I don't even know the proper word for it. Actually, I didn't take the Daniel Jones here because I had the Daniel Jones intercept. All right, I forget what prop I had there. You guys are going to have to give me a second there. I know I had the CD Lamb over, that's for sure. I had a Giants prop that was more for an onslaught, and it wasn't Daniel Jones. It had to have been another receiving prop then. When I see, it's the Sterling Shepard prop. Okay, never mind. Sorry about that, boys. Can't take two of the same guy in the same prop. I should have known better, right? I should have caught myself a little bit earlier there. But the thought process here, right, to reiterate, the 2 interceptions props, again, that's just a byproduct of projection. But these bottom 3, it's a little bit of a game script, right? We're assuming that the Giants are going to win this pretty handedly. So I'm taking their 2 best players, the guys that get the ball the most for their team on their overs, over Saquon rushing yards, over for Sterling Shepard receiving yards. But then the buyback here, right, is assuming that the Cowboys are playing from behind. Their big splash play sort of guy, CD Lamb, is going to have to get a bunch of, I don't want to call it garbage time usage, but from playing from behind, right? Downfield targets. Cooper Rush isn't going to want to throw it downfield, but if he's playing from behind, he's going to have to, which is only going to help him get to that interception that we're hoping that he throws at some point. Daniel Jones is just, even in a positive game script, he's more than liable to go out there and make a boneheaded mistake. So I don't feel that bad about the negative correlation there. He's more than capable of throwing a pick in a game that they win by like 17-20. So these are the top 5 that I liked. If I had to pick a core 4, the Cooper Rush over interceptions I like a little bit more than the Daniel Jones. I definitely like the CD Lamb prop quite a bit. I mean, even in a positive game script, right? He's probably going to go over that there. So I honestly think this is just a little bit mispriced there. I would be these top 3 there. And if I had to power 2 of them, it'd be the bottom 2, right? I take the interception prop out of there because it can be a little bit volatile from time to time. But that is what I'm thinking from the prize pick side. But that is all I've got for this stream, boys. I'm going to be doing the same thing on Thursday. I'll be going live at 6:30 p.m. Eastern time, covering that game. And for Sunday Night Football, I might be going live at 7 p.m. So when the games end there on Sunday afternoon, I'm debating going live. It depends on where I'm at that point. I don't plan my week out that much in advance, right? So if I have some sort of family function, I can't guarantee that'll happen, but I'll be there for Thursday nonetheless. And I'll give you the update on Thursday with whether there'll be a Sunday Night Football stream. But best of luck with all of your lineups, any prize pick slips that you guys are going after. It should at least be a fun fantasy slate. Like, I can't guarantee from the football side, guys, that's going to be a fun game. I mean, 38.5 point total. It's football, at least, right? We're going to be seeing a meaningful football, divisional football nonetheless. But hey, it's a fantasy slate that we get to sweat out and have some fun on. So we can definitely enjoy and revel in that at least. But best of luck, like I said before, guys. I'll see you guys next time. And best of luck with all of your week 4 stuff, too. We'll have plenty of content coming out. And look out for that as well.